We get so caught up on this number of salary and we live off of that. What happens when the tables sort of turn?
I couldn't work for 9 months. I was freaking out. I was like, I'm going back into poverty. This is gonna suck, and now I got 2 kids. But I sat down and did the math. How much do we need to live? What kind of lifestyle do we want to have? What does success look like? And I had to ask myself, like, what does that look like for me? Being able to provide for my family and my family's family, being able to walk around and feel good about where I'm at, and enjoying what I do for a living. And that changed my whole perspective. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? Do you want to have more stress, or do you want to be a little bit less stressed?
I actually met you, or I heard about you through our mutual friend Miguel, who's a buddy of yours from high school and one of my college buddies. When we had the conversation here, you spoke very highly about you and what you've been through. And you gave me a little spiel about your whole story about firefighting and acting, and now you own a barbershop, which I think is pretty awesome. But really fast, introduce yourself and let people know what you got going on today.
Thanks, man. Well, one, I want to thank you for having me. It's one, this is a really cool spot, and two, yeah, Miguel spoke highly about you, and he told me the same thing, that you were in law enforcement, that you guys met through college and all that. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that as well. So a little bit about me. I own a barbershop. I was born in Mexico, and like you said, I've gone through different kind of career paths of just kind of figuring out who I am, figuring out why I do what I do, and in search of like peace in a way. That sounds like a corny, but like that's ultimately kind of it for me. I've gone through different career paths, and I've hit certain peaks on there, or moments where I feel very proud of my accomplishments, and then still feeling a little bit of a void. I'm always searching for what it is that makes me feel kind of center on who I am and what I want to do.
And you were born in Mexico, or you just lived down there?
I was born in Mexico, and I lived down there as well.
How long?
It goes back and forth. So I was born out there, and I was brought over to the U.S. with my grandma and my aunt when I was like 3. Mm-hmm. Went back over there for first grade, then moved to the Bay, and then went back again in 2007 for about a year.
How's Mexico? What part of Mexico?
It's a city. It's a border town called Ciudad Juarez. It's a border from El Paso, Texas.
Texas, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that area changed since you've been a kid to where it is now? Good, bad, indifferent?
The people of Juarez are the most loving, kindest people that you'll meet. Like, they are just amazing. And truthfully, it's my happy place. It's like where I feel at home. And I didn't think about this until there was moments where I was having like anxiety attacks in the past, and I've been trying to like find something in my mind where I could grasp onto or just kind of float within those waves. And my grandma's house and her pool have been that spot for me, and that's in Juarez. That being said, when I moved back out there when I was like 19 in 2007, I was going to school in El Paso, Texas, and I was living in Juarez, and I would just like commute over the bridge every day. And Juarez got taken over by the cartel, and it has since then become the most dangerous city in the world. It goes back and forth with Tijuana. And
really, that's the one city? Mm-hmm. I never heard about it until now. Wow.
Unfortunately, it has a pretty bad rep from whether it's like the movie Sicario or a couple other things. There was a big femicide that has happened in Juarez for a long time. And, that happens all over the world, but it's been predominantly found in Juarez. And I think it was found there because during the cartel takeover in like 2007, when it started, they'd be finding mass graves of people, and then all of a sudden they would also find mass graves of like women, which I think they may have been there for decades, or they may have been there recently. It was just a disaster during that time. It was very tragic, and it doesn't represent the people that live there, but it is absolutely a thing that they have to live with right now.
Why women? Like, what was it about femicide that was happening over there? You would think if it's a cartel issue, they're killing up all the young boys.
I don't think it was the cartels killing the women. They still don't know who it was. There were a lot of people that were saying it's the bus drivers, because there's a lot of factories that go from Juarez, right? Whether you have like Ford or a whole bunch of different companies that are there. Mm-hmm. And so women would be taking the bus like at 5 a.m. or all times of the night to go to the factories and back. And they assumed it was bus drivers doing it, but then they also assumed it was foreign people doing it. And then I have my own, there's a lot. And honestly, it became a place where people can get away with whatever. all right? And unfortunately, again, it's not necessarily just the people from there. It's when you see that, I mean, we could see that in the Bay. When you see that something is happening like in the town or somewhere and things are like going crazy, supposedly, I mean, they are, right? But like it starts getting wild. People from all over the place start coming in, want a piece of that wildness or a piece of whatever that is. And I feel like that happened to Juarez in a very magnified way.
It's kind of like that broken windows theory. Have you ever heard of that? The idea being if you leave things like a broken window unattended, you're basically telling people, well, we don't care. So if you want to come and do whatever you want to do over here, we're not going to fix it. And it just invites people to say, I can get away with whatever I want. And it kind of goes back to in the industry that I'm in law enforcement. It's such a big deal for when cities clean up streets. The graffiti, making sure the trash is taken out, fixing the streetlights and the potholes. Because when you show you're actually caring about the neighborhood that way, more people are going to take pride in that and less people are going to commit all that stuff right there. But if there's no order with that, we're just like, we don't care, we don't have the time. You're right. You sort of invite more of the negative element in here, which unfortunately is some cities, even around the Bay Area, are dealing with. And some that, where do you start out with? Is it more police? Is it more money? What is it? It could be something as simple as making sure you have enough people in the public works department to take care of these streets because people don't feel like they, like my neighborhood doesn't matter, so why should I care? I mean, it just keeps going from there.
I completely agree. And that's so funny that we know these things and yet we don't really fully grasp that as something that's actually a factor. But I just went to Juarez again on the 11th of April. And I was a little bit scared going out there this time around, right? Just because I'm bringing my youngest daughter, I'm bringing my wife. And it's different when you can go into the danger zone and you're like, I could handle it. But when you're in charge of, 2, 3 women or more, your family in general, it becomes a little bit more ultra heightened on the situation. And one of the beautiful things that I saw when I was out there in Juarez, it's not the prettiest part, right? It's a desert. It's dusty, right? And it's not the prettiest, but I saw this man when I was driving, and he was sweeping this median divider on the road, right? And it's a desert, so there's like dirt and dust blowing, and he's sweeping it. And there's no reason for him to sweep that, but he's sweeping it because he has pride. And I looked around the streets, and everything was clean. Like, sure, there was dirtier cars, but there was no littering. There was nothing like that. And then this guy with a leaf blower comes in, and he blows everything that he was just dusting out. And I saw him just like kind of like be frustrated, like, dude, what the heck? And then he just got right back to it and started doing it again. And when I was doing the fire academy, we needed to do some community service. And I signed up for a whole bunch of things, but I realized there wasn't anything that I really cared about. We helped young adults enroll in school, or even teenagers that were kind of dropping out, enroll in school and all those other things. But there wasn't anything hitting me where I was like, this is what I want to like really volunteer in. So then I created a nonprofit called My Block, which stood for MYBLOCK, stood for Mentoring Youth, Building Love, Ownership, Community, and Knowledge. And so then I adopted the 5 like neighborhoods that I grew up around in Hayward. And then we started cleaning those up for the whole Adopt a Block thing.
Wow.
And so we went and just cleaned up all these areas. I had already moved out of Hayward. I was living in Alameda at the time, but I grew up in the streets over there. And
which neighborhood?
In the west, over by kind of right by Chabot area, this place called Scripps. And then
I grew up in Schaefer Park. That's why I asked.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Its neighborhood's changed.
Yeah. And it's so funny, too, because I noticed not only do neighborhoods change, a friend of mine once told me that, and I believe this to an extent, and there's some also like things to it, but like the ghetto is in your mind, and it's a state of mind, right? And I grew up in an area when I go there now, I'm like, yo, this is a middle class neighborhood. Why was it so rough, or why was everything else kind of looking wild, right? There was like, my step-uncle was dealing meth. There was a lot of my friends doing those types of things too, right? Selling it and all that. But it wasn't what it would look like a hood to be. But when your parents are involved in certain things and so forth, like you just kind of grow up with that mindset. And so when I left and I moved out, I really loved my environment growing up. There were some rough pockets, and I think the generation of like the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, like it got kind of wild at that time, right? It was a little bit more, we were a little bit more aggressive as a generation during that time. That's when I graduated high school, at least. But what I really loved about it was that my neighborhood I knew everybody. they were older, younger. Everybody knew me in the neighborhood, whether they were like grandparents or whatever, but there was this interconnectedness. There was a feeling of belonging in that place. And I was noticing that as my daughter was getting older, I had a daughter when I was 17. She was getting older, and I had a fear that the community was going to be gone, that nobody was going to know who she was. So I was like, all right, well, how do I try to recreate that? And so that's when I started my block. And I thought that, hey, you can't leave it up to somebody else to clean up your neighborhood. You got to really like do this yourself, even though I was cleaning up other people's neighborhoods anyway. But I just felt like all of Hayward was my neighborhood. This is the city that I grew up in. So I'm just going to try to do my part. And
that's awesome.
Cool.
I mean, even when I was growing up there, you could ride your bike out as a kid. You go down the street, neighborhood, parents were okay. You stay in LA, they knew you were at your buddy's house and their parents were watching over you. And, it just, everything was just kind of like the childhood that we all picture everything should be. Mm-hmm. And then as time goes on and we see the changes in the generations mm-hmm. where that sort of ethics sort of fades away, kind of really don't know why. It's almost as though the more the opportunities that we have to go chase careers and go do bigger things that our parents never had, the challenge is you might lose those values because you don't live under the same umbrella. So if you grow up in an environment where everybody just has kids at 25 and then you live together, the family, the grandparents are there, they take care of everybody, everything's cloistered in a similar area. But when you start saying, you know what, there's better things out there. I want to go get my degree. I want to go make some money. I want to go to New York City or Los Angeles, whatever it is, and make it. Mm-hmm. Then you sort of split away from that family environment. And then slowly things sort of, I don't want to say they fall apart, but they change and they adapt. I mean, I've seen that in my own family. We were really close for the longest time. And then myself and my cousin, similar age, started having no kids at all. Mm-hmm. And so all that family dynamic, the barbecues, the everything together, it just sort of faded away. And we start thinking more about how do we enrich our own lives? How do we adapt to this new way of living? Because it's not the same thing that our parents dealt with. Really, isn't the same thing that our grandparents dealt with. So when the grandparents tell us, you should do A, B, and C, they mean well, but they're telling us from their point of view what worked for them back in the 1950s, 60s, or whatever it is. And we're dealing with a whole different element now, and we're seeing that when in the neighborhoods, like they don't have the same, no fault of anybody, but the same ethics in some cases that their grandparents did. It's just a different environment. Now we have Instagram and everybody's competing against somebody from Miami or from Chicago or whatnot. And but what about your neighborhood here? Kind of something that we're all experimenting with. What does this look like in the future? If you don't have those morals growing up, you just kind of, you're going on a free for all. This is what I do now and no one's going to tell me no or otherwise. And when you had your child, that was at 17?
Yep.
Before you found out you were having a kid, what was your mindset at 16 and a half? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to go to school or I'm going to do this? Or what were you thinking at that age?
It was a wild time at that age for me. I'm going to be real. There was a couple of things going on in my mind. I grew up apart from my family, so I wanted to belong. I wanted to feel like I had my family. And my neighborhood was that for me. It felt like that for me. Now, granted, I haven't talked to those friends of mine in a long time, and some of them we've definitely have had moments where we're just like, hey, I don't think we're cool anymore. Yeah. I still got a lot of love for them for the experiences of my life, and I mean they've molded me to who I am. But I didn't even want to be their friends in the first place at first. It was out of, for me, initially it was out of necessity of, if I don't become cool with this person, they're probably going to either egg my house or they're going to, destroy something here. And my mom doesn't have that type of money. My stepdad doesn't have that type of money. So like, you can't beat them, join them. Right. And at first, that's kind of how it was for me. Now, originally, I wanted to be their friend when I first moved in. Who doesn't want to be? But then you see that their lifestyle is a little different than yours, but you're like, okay, whatever. And because of that desire of having a bit of family, like I would literally look to these strangers because I'm like, oh, that guy resembles my cousin, or that guy has these things. And I'd start trying to like create those bonds. But because of that, you start spiraling into the wrong type of lifestyle just to kind of make that connection more cohesive. But I was into acting. And so originally the plan was to have my senior year go to England and study and finish off like kind of high school out there and doing that. At the same time, my street was getting more into like, hey, why don't we make this into a clique? Like, it's going to be us against the LTA, or it's going to be us against whatever, And,
Oh man.
And so then we started our own little posse in there. And, there was 7 dudes that were super down for each other. And so then you start kind of going down that path a little bit more. And the whole society in that area was kind of getting primed for that. It was getting primed there was a lot of gang type of activities, and it was pretty glorified. And, in a way, it's kind of like the same way we have pride for sports, except for this neighborhood or that neighborhood. And so I was it was hard, man, because I was a good kid with good intentions, caught up in a world where my mom was working 3 jobs, my stepdad was also working. You're just growing up in the street, and you're just going to do whatever it takes to kind of keep that. I don't want to say survival as if it was extremely bad, but the pressures of surviving and navigating through that world, So I was kind of already torn up before I even had my kid. I think my kid actually kind of gave me, I know that my kid gave me more of a foundation on this is what you got to focus on now. So that was going on through my mind.
You're not alone in that. When you grow up in an environment that's challenging and your choices are, I either join with the guys that are my age group and they sort of pressure me to do whatever it is they want me to do, or ostracize yourself and say, I'm going to be above that, which is what we tell you you're supposed to do. You want to get out of that element. You want to go make your own name. It's not easy if you live in that neighborhood to just say, I don't want to be a part of the crew. Because then what are they going to do to you? And a lot of times, if you don't grow up in a neighborhood like that, you don't realize that.
Right.
We tell these young boys, hey, why don't you just get out of the neighborhood, get on a bus, go get a job. I'm like, it's not that easy for them when you live in an environment where your boys are basically saying either you do what we say or we're going to hurt you.
And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. Like, after we got really close, we became really close. These were my friends. Like, there was times where I had a very close friend of mine who, his mom, or their mom, because they're brothers, she was heavy into drugs, and she would live in San Jose at a trailer park, and then they would come back to Hayward, where they lived with their dad and their uncle. And there was a moment where I was realizing that it's your environment that creates these things. So there was a time where they were staying with me more often at my house for a week and more, and everything about them changed, right? Like, they were kinder on certain things, they were just more calm on certain things, and then they went back to San Ho, and they were wild out there, right? Their whole environment was just wild. Whenever you're in a low-income, poverty-ridden area, it creates a crazy kind of life. And I would see the change that would happen, and they would come back, and it's you got to start the work all over again. So we became really, really close. It's not even just hey, if I stop being with them, they're going to hurt me. Maybe in the beginning they would have egged my house when we were 8 and 10 and 12, you know what I mean? Maybe they would have put sugar in my gas tank, or my mom's gas tank, or broken window. All those things, very, very possible. But as we got older, there was almost this fear of but how am I going to, that's my boys now. Those are my boys. This is the loyalty. It's not even just the fear of getting beat up. It's the fear of losing whatever as a young man you feel is loyalty, feeling like you don't have anybody anymore. Because if you go to those things, it's probably because you feel alone in the first place, right? So you're going to be tearing apart something that you're working very hard to create. And I think that's even harder than fear, right? I know they say fear is stronger than love, but the lack of love is scary as hell.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe it. And I bring it up because nowadays, when you see all the burglaries that are happening with cars and whatnot, you might think these are 20-year-old kids. These are sometimes 11, 12-year-old kids who are doing these acts around town. And when you tell people that these are literally young kids who are doing all this, they can't believe how is an 11 or 12-year-old doing this? How do they get guns? How do they do all this? It's these neighborhoods, man, sometimes it's they're good kids. They start out good kids, and then you fall into this peer pressure thing. You fall into what the clique says, and not easy to walk away from all that pressure because you're kind of well, they're all cool with me. Why would I not want to do that? Incredible.
And the pandemic only amplified that, right?
Yeah,
it's already I look back on my life, and even though my mom worked 3 jobs and all that, we could have easily still been considered middle class at that time. There are kids that are even worse off who are in poverty, who, dude, their parents are working nonstop, if they have parents there. And what do we expect from them, right? Like this is where the neighborhood and the community has to come back in to say like it takes a village to raise kids. You know, they're on their own. I don't blame them. I don't condone the behavior, but I understand the feeling of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I understand like a call for help of like, hey, I kind of want a little bit of structure here in my life because I'm going to keep on pushing the envelope. And even if you go to jail and they get released again because they're underage, that's just reinforcing the fact that ain't nobody caring about me, man. Mm-hmm. Like they don't care about me. They don't care about what I just did. And I'm going to keep on repeating it and doing it over and over because I want someone to just show me that they love me enough to say, hey, bro, we're going to have to change your whole environment for you. And that's tough, man.
That is tough. Well,
especially because like kind of on the topic, I'm sorry, like the topic that you were saying we're getting more and more individualized, right? Like as you're saying, you're not going to go into the whole parenting thing or whatnot, and you're going off to college and kind of breaking down how it was for the people in the 50s and all that. We are getting more individualized and focused on our own lane. And I think that and Instagram and all that, those are all definitely contributing to what is happening right now.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about this earlier before we set everything up, that one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, and this whole experiment that we're in as a society ever since probably the 1950s, before we were even born, when the birth control pill came out, women have more rights, more freedoms, the whole nuclear family thing that kind of became a thing after World War II started breaking down, and we're all trying to figure out what does this new world look like for all of us. And we start figuring out, and everybody's different, and different parts of the country have this experience differently, that you don't have to be content with what the same things your parents or grandparents went through. Our parents and grandparents, it was normal to get a career for like the man and work 30 years at the same job. You just do it. It was normal for women to have kids in their early to mid 20s because that's just what you do. It was normal to help raise your grandkids because your kids are going out starting their own life. It was normal to buy a house and live in it for 30 years and retire out of it. And when you pass on, your kids get that house and the whole thing repeats itself. That was all normal. And, you know, the dynamics of where we live specifically in Silicon Valley, everything just sort of changed. And we're kind of fighting this is the way it was and this is the way it kind of is. So what do we sort of do about it? And like I was telling you, one of the challenges that I've seen is this has taken longer for people to figure out than we thought. When I graduated college at 22, 23, it was implied and it was also said that now that you have this degree, you'll be set. Nobody in the family had a degree, so you're going to be able to go out and get that big 6-figure job in whatever industry. And now you're going to be in a much better position than we were growing up as your parents or your grandparents. So now you can start your family and buy a house and do everything that we did, but you're making more money, so you'll be better off. At least that's the mindset. What they didn't tell you and they didn't understand because it was different, you really don't know anything about life at age 22 or 23. You think you do, but really you're just out of school. Now you have to go figure out what this thing called life is. You got to learn social skills. You got to learn how to read body language. Your mind isn't even fully developed yet, technically, till you're about 26, 27 years old. Women, it's a little bit earlier, like 24, 25, men 26, 27, before things start to click in a different way. And now you're building up your own experiences. You're learning how to deal with money. You're going through the ups and downs of life. You know, rent gets too expensive. Do you get kicked out of your place? Are you in credit card debt? Do you go through bankruptcy? You're going through relationships, ups and downs. And you have to go through all that to really figure out what you want. And nobody wants to hear about going through heartache, but you really do need it. I think anyway, we keep trying to overstep it and say, well, how about I teach you what you should know without having you going through it? But you need to know what it feels like to fall on your face, because that's how you pick yourself back up. And we really don't figure that out in modern day society till probably at least for guys anyway, till around our early to mid 30s. That's when things start to settle down. Like, all right, I kind of have my career. I have an idea of what I want in a relationship. Do I want kids? Do I not want kids? Do I want to buy a house? Am I better off renting? Do I want to live in this city, that city? It all starts to come together. And if you're fortunate enough to put yourself in a situation where you can make that choice, you can definitely decide what path you want to take. It doesn't come for free. There are things that you give up. Maybe you wanted to have kids earlier on, but you said it's not the right thing for me right now. So while your boys are having kids that are now 8, 9, 10 years old, you're like the one guy that, I don't have any kids to bring over to the family barbecue, so I'm just kind of like the cool uncle or whatever. You go through that and you learn. And that's one thing that I wish that we could teach the new kids who are about 8, 9, 10 years old. It's like, here's what your grandparents did, different life. Here's what your parents did, or here's what your great grandparents did, different life. Here's what I did. Here's options that you have available. At least you know what life could be like if you go down specific paths. And with AI now affecting everything, who knows what that's going to look like. But there's no right or wrong choices, but it's just knowing what you need to do and getting all the information out that we just don't really tell people as much as I'd like to say. So what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, yeah, no, dude, 100%. We're in a transition period. And like my wife tells me when we're putting the baby to bed, transitions are hard. It's And we've had a lot of progress, and sometimes we don't really recognize how fast things have moved in life. Technological advancements have changed the game like crazy, like they've done in the past before, right? When the Industrial Revolution and all that other things, like those things, all that has changed the game plenty of times. This one, I don't want to say it's like no other, but it's like no other. Like there's a lot happening right now.
It's our big challenge for our generation. And speaking of that, how did you manage your transition? Because we talked about in the beginning how you went from over here, this was going to be my life, to now you're owning a barbershop, which never was even on the radar. So how did that whole thing come up from point A to point B? Because you started off and you wanted to be an actor. And what did you like about that? And how did your life, pivot? I'm guessing your child had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. I want to be an actor. I think there was something about, I learned English watching TV. I learned English watching like the Justice League, because the villain would always say what he was going to do before he did it, and then their plans would get destroyed. So I just kind of learned, okay, he's saying he's going to do this, and then that means that, and then all that. So I learned English that way. And I just fell in love with the fantasy world of whatever they're doing. I wanted to be an actor, and I realized later on, I think I liked it because I wanted to try all those jobs that they were doing. Like I wanted to be a pilot, and I'm like, well, if I'm an actor, I could learn how to fly. You know what I mean? I want to be Superman because I wanted to be Superman. But I transitioned from acting to fire. I was living in Los Angeles at the time when I was studying acting at this school called Playhouse West, and it's an amazing school. It's really cool. I got a lot of, I guess you could say, well, they're definitely famous, but they're great actors, even the ones that aren't famous. It's just a great training for acting, and or a specific style of acting. But anyway, I went from there. I got really broke. And I was definitely that struggling artist. And I wasn't. Well, let me see if I can back up so I could say the whole thing. So I was in high school having a kid, and I was studying theater, and the goal was to go to England and study more theater and graduate out there. That didn't happen. I had a baby. Stayed in Mount Eden, then went to Chabot, did some more acting there. And one of my best friends, he had told me about this acting technique in San Francisco. So I went over there, started doing that, fell in love with it because it was, again, structure. And when you grow up with no parents really being there besides providing financially and with a roof over your head, you're looking for a little bit of that discipline and structure. And this technique called the Meisner technique was something that really gave me a way to take acting, which I'm not going to say this is like this in all community colleges or different schools, but it becomes a little bit of like playtime and just kind of like, I don't know, no real hard technique that I felt. And so the Meisner technique kind of honed in on that and gave me the discipline I was looking for. A student from LA had come to visit to kind of take some classes while he was away from his school. He told me about Playhouse West. I moved to Playhouse West, or LA. And because I moved out there, I wasn't able to see my daughter for a long time. Now, that wasn't the sole reason. My daughter's mom and I were definitely going through some drama and tension. And so if I stayed out here, I would have probably ended up going to jail or doing whatever, or kind of like just really hating each other. And so I took a route of going out, and I decided like, hey, if I'm going to be here and not be able to see my kid and probably start becoming the villain that I don't want to be, then I could take that route, or I can go and chase my dreams and never be able to blame the lack of my success on like, hey, well, I had you and I needed to stay here for you. So I was like, let me go and pursue that and show that to my daughter that, hey, if you want to go for something, you got to go for it. So I did that instead, and I accomplished it. I went to the school, became eligible for the Screen Actors Guild Union, even did a short film that I wrote, and that got accepted by this film festival. It's like a national film festival at the time. They played it at the Kennedy Center, flew me out there, met John Legend. It was pretty freaking great. But in that moment, I became really, really broke. And there was a moment where I kind of broke down because I realized that the money or the lack of money was going to basically make me give up on that in that moment. Like I just could not sustain that. And coincidentally, around that same time, the building that I stayed in Los Angeles, one wing of it caught on fire, and firefighters came up, and it was weird, man. There was this firefighter was like, throwing a ladder on the side of the building, and then he was walking or climbing up towards my window, and I looked at him, he looked at me, and we looked pretty similar. It was kind of weird. We both kind of saw each other on the window, like, yo, what the heck? And
like your doppelganger?
Kinda.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was interesting. And I had never thought about being a firefighter at that time, or prior to that. And so I knew somebody that was a firefighter. I was working with firefighters, and I asked him at the time, this is when I was living in LA, and I was like, hey, how do you become a firefighter? What do I have to do to become one? And he was like, yo, there's actually this really cool academy. This is hecka weird. But like, there's this really cool academy. It's actually in Northern California, and it's in this community college. And he didn't even know how to pronounce it, but he's like, I think it's called Chabot or Shabbat or something like that. And I was just like, what? Like, I grew up in front of Chabot College the whole time, and coming from like high school at Mount Eden High, they would always call, and even like elementary school, they would call Chabot as like Chabluit, right? Like Hesperian High, you did not make it.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And so I found it interesting that this guy in LA was telling me about this school that I grew up in, or that I grew up by, that was really good at the whole fire academy thing. So I enrolled. I was initially trying to be a paramedic, but they tied in because, like I mentioned earlier, there's something about wanting to belong. Like when I came over here, I came with no one besides my grandma and my aunt, and I've always been searching for like that belongingness, not only family-wise, but also feeling like you're American. And to me, doing the fire service was something that is like, oh, okay, cool. I'm kind of earning my stripes. I'll be able to have that immigrant story for my kids and be like, oh, my dad used to be a firefighter or a cop or in the military or something like that. And fire was going to be that for me, or was that. But I realized more as I was doing it too, how much community involvement was a part of it. And I love the community aspect. I think villages are super important to have. I mean, it's tribal, right? We all do these things. And so I just kind of shifted. It was literally just like, all right, well, acting's got to go to the side. I'll probably do it as a hobby, but this is the way that I can go. And honestly, it's been great because you had to learn, well, I don't know. I think fire for me taught me, again, more discipline. And when I end up going back to acting, because I will eventually go back to that, I'm able to use like the structure that you get from, and I'm sure you could attest to that when it comes to law enforcement, that you do get discipline structure and you kind of know how to handle certain situations, right? Not just setting smart goals or stuff, but like really knowing your capabilities and knowing what it takes to get to the next spot. And I've been applying now a lot of that fire structure to everything that I do. And I apply that to barbering now as well. It's just a whole community thing and staying disciplined, staying clean.
So you were cutting, so just to make sure, you were cutting hair on the side while you were going to the fire academy?
Yeah, I was cutting since I was like 13. I started cutting my own hair when I was 13.
Nice.
And yeah, so my cousin, when I was like 15, he was like, hey, you didn't come to the U.S. to be a barber. You got to be something great. And so I did not do any barbering at all. I was just cutting friends for, for free, sometimes $5. And yeah, that was kind of it. It was really just like a hobby, pastime, a way to make friends and all that. And it wasn't until I wasn't getting picked up or hired. Actually, I got pretty close. So I got close to getting picked up. I got picked up by Alameda County Fire Reserves twice. One time I didn't pass the background check. And then that got me in through a deep depression because I was like, dude, my whole life is different than what it used to be. I've tried hecka hard. I don't know what it was. And they didn't tell me. And I remember the captain at Chabot was telling me, like, yeah, sometimes they won't tell you what it is or whatever. And I didn't know. But I applied again and I made it again. But then ownership on this one was like, they gave me a list of papers, and there was one paper that I missed. I didn't turn in right on time, and so that instant disqualification. And I was like, oh, dang, whatever. But by that time, I was like 30, and I was so scared because it was like they usually say whatever you're gonna do by 30 is what you're gonna be doing for the rest of your life, right?
One of that big lies that they tell you at that age.
Yeah. And so I was like, dude, I have a fiance, you know what I mean? I have my daughter. She was already probably like 15 at the time. And so I was like, well, I gotta get something. So I got my barber license, and from there it kind of just I went to one barbershop that I got picked up at, and then within a few months they were asking me to be a co-owner of the shop, which I thought was amazing. But I felt like an imposter because I was like, I've never cut in a barbershop before, and I've never really I think I got my hair cut at a barbershop maybe like 10 times throughout the time when I turned 13 and on. So I didn't really know that whole barber culture. It was just kind of like different for me. And then I had the opportunity to go meet one of the mentors. Well, he wasn't a mentor yet, but this guy that a lot of people look up to and I looked up to. And he gave me a chance. I went over there to show him this hair product line that I had been working on. And I guess he was impressed with the demeanor and everything else. And he asked me if I wanted to come in and do an advanced apprenticeship and learn traditional barbering through him. And so I did that, and I studied under him for 3 years, and then fast forward, own a shop.
That's awesome, man. So then this whole time, were you still saying, okay, this is cool for right now, but really I want to go back to fire, or maybe this isn't what I want to do? Was that your mindset in the very beginning?
Yeah, to this moment, there's still a little bit of that lingering, itch there. Every time I hear a fire engine go by or a truck or an ambulance, there's always just that thought of, man, I kind of want to, there's just so much of a camaraderie, a bond. It's a response to a call of help that the community needs, right? And you get to work hard, you get to kick it with your homies, you get to make food together. Like, that's the closest thing to a superhero role you can get, in my opinion, right?
Get to sleep a lot, that's
hey. I don't know about that, man. My first, when I was doing ride-alongs, like the first day, it was a 24-hour shift, and I remember logging all the calls, and there was like 19 calls that day. And they're usually about an hour long each. At least, downtown Oakland, Station 1, they were busy. They were definitely busy at that time. So
I'd believe it. I mean, the things that they got to deal with, and then it's not just fires, it's medical calls, it's overdoses, it's somebody's locked out of their car, whatever it is. It's more than just what people might initially think that a firefighter does. They do a lot more than just the basics of just fighting fires, because not every building catches on fire, but absolutely. People always need medical attention or rescuing or a car accident, and they show up for all that. And yeah, I will definitely give them all credit on that one, even though law enforcement and fire, we always like to have that friendly competition with each other. Or when they're in the back of the station, they're playing basketball. Like, oh, it must be really nice to play basketball on duty, huh? Yeah. Or pickleball. That's the thing that the guys have at our did. Yeah, all right. They're playing pickleball again. Like, don't want to run over that thing. So, yeah, at least you don't have to carry all this stuff 24/7. You get to wear your T-shirt and your wool pants, whatever, until you get the call. But it's good that you still have that itch, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. You really don't. But I'm really curious to see, when you got into this barbering thing, what is it about it that was driving you to say, this is something special? Was it your skill set? Was it talking to people? Was it the environment? What was that thing that's sort of keeping you in there? Like, this is something for me.
I think it became like the perfect outlet for everything that I had done already, right? With acting, you pick up on nonverbal behaviors. You learn how to listen to people. And that's the biggest thing you need with cutting hair, except for knowing how to cut hair. But everybody can learn how to cut hair, right? Like, that's simple. And then I was able to implement that fire technique or not the technique, but like the disciplinary act of it, right? Just being consistent and, holding yourself to a certain standard and having integrity. And those are some of the biggest principles that are needed for barbering, realistically.
Yeah.
And then my desire for wanting to be part of the community all just kind of perfectly meshed into that. My wife says I'm not good with authority or taking like orders from people, which is probably why she always tells me that it's good that I didn't do fire. But I feel like it is just one of those things that is so fluid for me that just kind of fell in my lap, and it's something I've been doing for the majority of my life in the first place. And then now running the shop, it's even more attention to that, right? Because there isn't anybody above you that's telling you, you got to make sure you have integrity on these things, or you could kind of cut corners on this, or you don't have to clean that. But like, I have this constant feeling that someone's always watching, someone's always recording whatever I'm doing. And so I try to stick to those principles the whole time.
It's amazing how you don't think about it at first, but being a barber, like being a police officer, like being so many other careers out there, like a hairdresser, you spend enough time with people, you're almost like a therapist. It's like they're coming there for a haircut, yes, but it's also the experience of being around people that you can sort of just, let it all out from. And I'm sure you've got plenty of stories about what people actually do talk about in a barbershop, but it's the experience of just being able to talk to somebody while you're getting your haircut done, as opposed to just going somewhere, okay, I need my fade, okay, here's $50 or whatever the rate is now, and then I'm out of here, and just be quiet. It's that sort of, guys environment where we just all kind of shooting the shit together, and this person in that chair is talking to that person over here, and you're in the middle of the conversation and you're kind of going back and forth. The barber here is talking to that guy over there, and it's just a cool environment to be a part of. It's like those movies where it's just, you kind of want to be there. Getting the haircut is almost secondary. Yeah, you're going to get at the end of the day, but just that experience. I mean, I'm sure your shop is no exception to that, right?
It's a beautiful feeling. I think that the barbershop is so... man, it's so lovely. I can't really describe it any other way besides that. For a while, I was talking on Instagram a while ago about during the pandemic, and before and during the pandemic, and then after, of just that the barbershop is the one place where men kind of go to, because they don't go to the doctors often, right? And for a long time prior to 2020, we weren't really talking about therapy.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a place that we can go to just kind of like, hey, let everything out. And I think I saw this there was like this report of a lot of these barbershops in mostly African-American areas, and I think it was in the South. And they were like doing blood pressure tests on people, and they were just kind of like doing everything that they could to try to treat a lot of the community in ways that they normally wouldn't, because they're not going to doctors. And I find that super valuable. I mean, it's amazing. So with my shop, it's a little different because it's just me. It's only one chair. And I have plenty of space for like 4 or 5 chairs in there. But I wanted to really kind of hone in on the bonds between me and that other person. And it's so funny because, well, one, we're not really looking at each other. I'm in the back of their head the whole time, and we're talking, and there's no one else around, right? So the comfort level gets like accelerated. It's just me. It's really just them talking, and they're not looking at the mirror. They're looking away from the mirror. So it's just like, imagine yourself just kind of venting, and there's someone asking you questions here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. And then you're just kind of vibing, and there's no pressure. And someone brought it up to my attention recently that there was like actually a study that when you don't see somebody, you get a little bit more comfortable quicker. And that's helped out for me. And it's been pretty freaking cool. Like, I really do love that. I would eventually love to have more barbers in there, but not at the expense of messing up the vibe that I have in there right now, or the trust that my clients and friends now have with me, right? So it is that. I hope to expand it for the sake of building more community, not for the sake of like, how do I get, richer necessarily.
Well, what shifted you from working with the partner in that first shop that you have to just saying, I want my own place? What was that mindset?
Well, one, I was already comfortable working by myself because had always been working by myself until those, I would say, 4 years of working at a shop. But the real shift it happened in November of 2020. My grandpa and my grandma came over from Mexico City, and they were going to go stay with my mom, who had just recently bought a house in Washington State. And so they stopped by just as a little layover for about a week or two. And in that moment, my grandpa, I remember we were setting up my balcony over in Jack London Square, and I was going to have my anniversary dinner. And so he was like helping me get it all romantic and stuff. And I was telling him after we were done, like, I was thinking about opening up my own shop at some point. And he said, like, yeah, man, you don't want to get to be my age and wonder what would have happened if I would have done this. And I saw him do that over and over again, always wanting to start businesses. And so he was like, man, you're young enough to recover if something bad happens, right? Like, if you lose it, like, you still have plenty of time to make up for it. And so I was getting a little bit more confident on that. And it kind of started lingering in my mind. And then they ended up going to stay with my mom for a bit. But then in December, he started feeling a little bit more tired and sleepy. And so we didn't have medical insurance for him yet. So we flew him back to Mexico City. And in Mexico City, they did some tests on him. They found out that he had advanced lung cancer. And then he also ended up catching COVID at that moment. And so within 10 days, he ended up passing away. And that was shocking to me because we weren't at all expecting any of that. And we thought he was in good health and everything and weren't really concerned with him. I was more concerned with my grandma. And after he passed New Year's Day of 2021, it got to me. Obviously, that was like the real central paternal figure for me. And I just kind of like kept on playing over in my head the things that he said. And so I reached out to the owner of the shop that I was working at, and I told him I just kind of got to go on this journey on my own real quick. And 4 months later, I was able to get the lease for the shop that I'm at now. And I dedicated it to him. So it's called Celso's Hair and Beard. That's my grandpa's name. And it's been cool, man. I've been trying to I got a picture of him on one side and his friends. He's sitting on top of his car. And then I got a picture of me and my friends during my wedding. And I've tried to kind of get that vibe going of like what it was like in the 50s to what it's like now and create that whole environment, kind of making it ideally look timeless, not like a museum, but more like when you get up in there, you're away from the city, you're just kind of feeling like, where am I? It doesn't feel like a barbershop too much. It feels more like a home. It was kind of the vibe I was trying to go for.
When somebody asked me about you and I said I was talking to you today and they wanted to know about your shop and your IG profile, the first thing I said to them is that when you look at his photos, they give you this sort of 1920s vibe, the sort of old school barbershop feeling that, nowadays you go into some of these shops and the music's playing loud, they got lights everywhere. Maybe it's better for a cut that the barber can see everything, but it takes away from that old school experience. Like when you go somewhere, there's a shop in New York, I forgot what it's called, but you go in and the guys all have the handlebar mustaches. They're wearing the aprons. They have like the old school wood on the ground. They have chairs that look like they've been from the 1920s. And they're modern people with modern clippers and modern everything, like, iPads and whatnot. But the feel of the shop kind of lets you like, it's an inviting thing. When they give you a shave, it's the old school, back with the foamer and everything. It's not just, okay, use the clippers and you're good to go. It's like, no, I want to give the whole experience. The towel, they got the old barbershop pole thing that spins around. It's like, this is a cool shop. And some of the shops, even the shop down the street that I go to, it's a very similar environment. It's kind of why I actually had to go there. It was the first thing was the aesthetics about the place that drew me in. Mm-hmm. And then it became about the cut, and then it became about the total experience. But that initial thing was, And even down the street over here, there's like 4 or 5 barbershops, and you can walk by and see how each one of them are different. Some are more modern, some have a lot of lights, some are holes in the wall. There's one by the hospital up the street where it's literally like probably no bigger than this section here. It's just like 3 chairs lined up right next to each other, and you walk in like there's one. There's no room to really create an experience other than the windows that face that onto Van Ness. It's a different vibe, but the old school barbershop vibe, I dig it. And when I show people your photos, that's the kind of experience that I imagine going to your shop is that old school feeling. So great job on that one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Is that you taking the photos or you got someone else helping you?
No, that's me. That's me. Yeah. It's interesting because I always told my friends, like, I will never be a photographer. I have zero desire to take pictures I just don't have that eye. And, lately, I've liked some of the pictures I've taken. It's hard for me to say that, but I've actually liked some of the pictures I've taken of people because they have zero to do with me. Yeah. It's been all about like, how do I make this guy, not make this guy, but how do I capture how I feel about this guy in this picture? You know what I mean? Guy or girl. I don't know if I've taken any pictures of the woman clients that I have, but like it's very cool to me because like, I don't like it being about me. I'm actually a pretty shy dude. And you mentioned like the order of which you kind of got attracted first is the environment and what it looks like, the aesthetics of it, and then it's the cut, and then it's the experience. And I've been kind of, I don't know if you've noticed, I don't like going on social media too much. I've even put a little time of like, hey, I'm on social media from that to that, this to that. And it's mostly for my own mental stability. But I really want to attract people for the experience first and the connection. And then obviously the aesthetics have to look nice and presentable. And then like, oh, and he cuts okay. Like that's the order of how I like to do things.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about your Instagram strategy. It's when you're celebrating other people's wins. Here's my client that just got a brand new cut for his wedding, or this is the little man's first cut. People see that. It sets you apart than just me, which is so much of what social media is. It's just look at me, here's what I do. But when you showcase other people, your listener or your viewers will pick up on it. Like, okay, this is a guy that's a barber. He could easily just put the fades, the back of the head, here's my fade work, and that could be cool. But by him putting the profile of the person, and even when you write your posts, they're lengthy posts. So the fact that you're putting that much time and effort into it, the people who pay attention and want to read it, they're going to know more about your client and the way that you do things. It shows a level of pride that unfortunately we don't see a lot now with modern social media. But by you doing that, it's going to start to pick up with people who want authenticity.
Thanks, man.
It is kind of the way the world that we live in with Instagram. At first, I would have said the same thing, like, who cares about taking pictures? They're just pictures. But doing them the right way and showcasing and telling a story about something changes the whole narrative. This whole Instagram reel thing that was a big thing for about a year or so, it was like, oh, it's all the rage, all video. And then it started getting into, well, I'm losing sort of like that connection, or I don't know who the host is, or I don't know what this is. And that's one of the reasons why I'm starting to put more and more photography into my show, is because I want you to get the experience with the right photography, the right photographer, and the right environment. You're creating a story that your audience can see. You're not just a host, or you're not just a barbershop owner. You're doing more than this. You're celebrating other people's wins. You want to make improvements in the world. This is why you're doing what you're doing. And people will pick up on that. It may be slow. It may not be right away, but if you're not chasing that, it'll come when it actually arrives. So I think you're on the right track with that.
Thanks.
Going forward with that, I always wanted to ask a barber is, what kind of stories do you get from your clients? Is it usually relationship stories? Is it about work? Is it about life philosophy? What kind of things are you usually getting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix, and I and I like to go everywhere with them, from aliens to whatever, just because sometimes we just need a little bit of lightheartedness in the shop, right? But yeah, we go deep. With a lot of people, we get to go deep into personal things. I'm very vulnerable. I share a lot of me. I have no problem with like, hey, this is who I am, because it continues to make me a different person. The stories are kind of cool. I think, one of the reasons that I focus on people for my Instagram, it's because sometimes I think we wonder, like, does anybody see us? You know what I mean? We're so individualized. We're so caught up. I try not to talk about what they do for a living, and I'm actually going to do an event at the shop at some point where I just invite everybody over. And the one rule is you can't talk about what you do. Like, you can't introduce yourself with, like, I'm in law enforcement or I'm a barber, because like we just get so funneled in as if that is the only bit of humanity that we have, or the only purpose that we have in life is to be a professional in whatever aspect. And the stories that I get from people are everywhere, from marriages of like 25 years or more, and if they're doing all right, if they're falling apart, how do they get their way back into it? Struggles with either family, parents, in-laws, wives. There's a lot of me venting about my things too. And a lot of it is work. And I think the cool thing about work is that that's been the biggest thing sometimes, that we get so caught up, especially a lot of my clients that are in the tech industry, like the focus on there, the nonstop grind when it comes to working from home. And also it's nonstop grind and yet also feeling unproductive at the same time. It's like a weird thing where you just kind of like...
Yeah, I can see why that would be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to the tech industry, and a lot of your clients are from tech. Coming to the Bay Area, if they're not originally from here, you get lured in by how much Google is going to pay you, or how much Instagram or Facebook, Meta, or whatever it is, and Apple, and some of these salaries are really big, and we've been so used to it around here. Mm-hmm. And now sort of the chickens have come home to roost, and these tech companies are laying off people left and right. Perceptually, it seems you can make the case that they overhired during the pandemic, and this is just them correcting it. Well, regardless of that, what's the vibe from a lot of your tech clients? Did they feel like, no big deal, I'll find another job? Or do you think, this isn't the career for me anymore, the money's good, but this is happening? What kind of overall themes do you seem to get from those clients?
I feel like there's always going to be that bit of fear and insecurity, right? And then we all kind of chime into that same echo chamber of like, oh yeah, no, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, when I talk to them individually, they seem pretty confident regardless. They're like, and I love that. I appreciate the fact that, like, yes, I might get got, but at the same time, I'll find a way back. And it seems like as big companies lay off, there are other companies that are missing that type of individual in their company. So they get kind of picked up. It's just kind of shifting pieces over and over. I think some of the hard things for some people might be leaving a big name company and then trying to go to a little name company. I think sometimes, and myself included, we get caught up in like the prestige of having that title, right? I remember my mom's husband, my mom was talking about, because she works at Apple, and she was talking about how, I don't know if she was talking about this herself, but somebody brought up the fact that LA praises like Gucci and all their name brand clothes and that they're always repping that. And then my mom's husband was like, yeah, but the Bay Area does the same thing too. Your God just looks different. Like, you guys just rep Google and Facebook and all that other stuff. So we're still kind of going after that name brand, right? But this time it's like, who do you work for as opposed to who are you wearing? So I think that might be one of those things where people just might not feel as comfortable going to a lower name or a not as high of a name company than Meta or Google or something else.
Do you get the vibe that people are nervous or seriously thinking what the future of AI is? And is my job at X tech company going to be around? Am I going to depend on the salary? What's the vibe of that?
I feel like those that are in the know of how AI works are not intimidated by it at all because they know it's still fairly early. At the same time, I think they're impressed with how impressive it can be and useful on certain things, but I don't see them being super intimidated.
So nobody has the vibe of, yeah, today it's not all that, but in 10 years, well, I better, think twice about it. I bet you do.
I think about that for things like accounting and stuff like that, where I'm using QuickBooks or Intuit or whatever, and I'm like, yo, this is going to get more on those little more simpler things. I would still need an accountant that knows more, whether it's loopholes or things that I don't know, right? Like, those are still helpful. I'm not going to hit that up on ChatGPT necessarily, but I haven't fully gotten that vibe from them. We've talked about it, but I mean, a lot of these people are pretty intelligent, and even though I have my own concerns with it, they don't seem super concerned yet. I'm not saying that day won't come, but so far they're still pretty confident.
As one of the vibes that I hear around here is, it's not so much that people who get laid off from Salesforce or Google or whatnot, less of a concern, surprising that they're not going to find another job, more concerned that the jobs they would get, let's say a startup, are going to pay them a fraction of what they had at Google or Meta, or they're not going to have as much benefits or the equity. And it goes back to what I told you in the beginning about, if we get so caught up on this number of salary and we live off of that, what happens when the tables sort of turn? Now, maybe you get laid off and you have an opportunity to get another job that pays you half of what you made over there. And you're like, well, what do? I need to make $200,000, otherwise I can't survive, even though there's a startup over here that's willing to pay you $100,000 for an opportunity. It's a job, but you get caught up in that whole thing about, I need X amount of salary. Does that vibe ever come into play about the fear of losing money because I need to take a different level job?
I think for some, yes. I think that's the human problem that we have right now, not even just in tech. I think we don't, even all the way up to our government, we are never satisfied. We don't have a number of what is enough? What does that look like? What does success look like? And I think that's where we're at, that's where our problem is right now. So during the pandemic, I couldn't work for 9 months. And so I thought to myself, I was freaking out. I was like, I'm going back into poverty. This is going to suck, and now I got 2 kids. But I sat down and did the math. My wife's a math teacher, so that helps out a lot. And just calculated, how much do we need to live? How much money do I make right now? What kind of lifestyle do we want to have? And what does success look like? And I had to ask myself, what does that look like for me? For me, it was like living in a safe place, being able to provide for my family and my family's family, being able to walk around and feel good about where I'm at, and enjoying what I do for a living, like really genuinely liking it. And that changed my whole perspective. It had, because at first I was like, well, how much would you need to have that level of happiness? And I said a random number. I was like 426 million, only because my birthday is April 26th. And so I was like 426 million. But I realized I don't need that much. I realized that I lived in Alameda. It was already a safe place. I was taking care of my mom at that time. Well, not taking care of her. She had just got stuck with us during the pandemic. Now my grandma lives with me, so I'm taking care of her. I'm able to walk from my job to my house within like 4 minutes. I'd say like those are the things that we need to look out for is to find out what success looks like for you. For me, it's not a flashy car. For me, it's nothing else like that. It's just whatever kind of makes you happy. And so when it comes to like salary, just look at your life. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? Do you want to have more stress, or do you want to be a little bit less stressed and just have enough to not have enough as in like, hey, be just poor and just about that. But
well, everybody's competing. If you have a BMW 3 Series, there's a little part of me that says, am I going to be okay having a Honda Civic because we're about the same age and we make probably about the same amount? And if he has that, at least for guys anyway, because we love toys.
For sure.
We love the cars.
I constantly want that. I was actually just reading this book. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. This is what the whole thing is about.
I was reading this book. I'm blanking on the name of it. I'll get it to you at the end. But basically, there's a trap for people who are high earners, right? And when you're a high earner, or even now, and they do this to like people in college, I feel, you can't be a doctor riding a Civic. You got to have something nice. It's kind of a trap of making you feel like, even if you have the mind, if you really ain't rolling in dough like that, you're really not doing nothing. And so then you get trapped in that. Not only do you get trapped in student loans, but then you get trapped in that. Like we talked about the lifestyle inflation in a way where, well, now I got to have a house and now I got to have this whip that looks really cool and all this other stuff. And so now you're working just to pay off those debts, but you have zero freedom to really have mobility, like you were saying, to move wherever you want and do whatever. And I think it would do us some good to just kind of get rid of all of those temptations if we can, hone in on what it is. Honestly, what makes us all feel safe is a little bit of money in the bank, right? Like that makes you feel a little bit more capable of doing things.
Well, it's, when we're chasing all that bling, we're usually in our 20s. Let's just call it what it is. When we're in our 20s as a guy, it's always who has the biggest thing. How do I get to be like him? These rappers worse, like all of this joy, so I must have that because they have all these women around them. That guy has the Lamborghini, and look at his lifestyle. He must be living large. I got to get that so I can get the same thing. We don't really think about the fact that that's what we see right now. When behind closed doors, how's this person's life that you don't know about? And then for a lot of people, it starts to come into play when you find out, hey, this person is a really high, big celebrity, makes a ton of money. Oh, wait, he just got arrested for doing this, or his wife left him for that, or he actually is, he blew. You hear about that with sports players like Antoine Walker in the NBA, Allen Iverson, I think, too. Big name people, and they blew all their money, got into a crap load of debt. And you're like, how would you, with making millions of dollars, get into that bad of a financial story? But you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You just see the lifestyle and you think, I want that. And then you get older in your 30s, you realize what's more important. Like these kind of conversations, you're like, this actually is more important to us at our age than it ever would have been at 20 years old. We'd be like, hey, where's the bar? Where's the cars at? Let's go have some fun. And your things change as you get through life, and people are starting to figure that out more and more as they advance and they get more degrees. And then kind of it goes back to what I said in the beginning. If we get too trapped in a money pit early on because we think so, and we're spending all this time paying it back, now we're getting more behind the starting line. But I can't blame anybody for doing that, because that was me at one point too. Up to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in credit card debt, not having anything in the savings account, not knowing, driving a basic Honda Accord. I'm like, wow, I'm sitting here trying to work for all this, and look at all this debt that I've piled up and had no idea how to get out of it. And it took me a couple of years to freaking finally get out of all that. And then you realize, this is no one told me about that. Here I am chasing all this, all the toys. And at the end of the day, what does it matter? The car is broken down. I need to get a new one anyway. All that time invested into a car, and it's already, need a new one now.
That was me.
Yeah.
I never had a brand new car, but I was definitely in debt for a long time, because you're chasing that, right? You're chasing like whatever that lavish lifestyle looks like. And I was pretty bad, man. My credit score was not good. And until my wife put me on some books like Susie Orman and a couple other books, and then the Dave Ramsey approach. And so climbed out of debt, fixed my credit score, did all that. And even to this day, I still, man, I'll be on Amazon or online looking for something. There's always that itch of buying something, right? And like, how do I get this? And I just window shop, and my wife gets kind of mad. She's like, why are you doing this? But I'm like, baby, I haven't bought any of it. I just look, I pretend, I get in my mind, whatever, and then I don't buy it. But I think those are voids that we're trying to fill, right?
I mean, part of it is that whole retail therapy that we give our, girlfriends and wives a hard time for, because we're like, why are you looking around for all these clothes? You can't afford them or you don't need anymore. And part of the experience is just to go out there, and Amazon has this locked down with that one button click thing. I mean, they're smart. They know what they're doing. You see it and you're like, oh, I'm kind of tempted to buy it. And then you just press the button really quick. Before you can think about it, it's already on its way. Like, well, I guess I'm getting that thing.
Yeah.
It's ingenious how they were able to hack that code there, because if you see it and I make it as easy as possible for you to buy that, you're probably going to buy it. And then afterwards, you're like, I shouldn't have done it, but okay, I got it now. And now I'll enjoy what I have. And the cycle repeats itself.
Right.
So I definitely see it just like the window shopping. Oh, if I could buy this, if I could buy that. And then if you don't catch yourself, you might just press that one click button and then yep, it's yours now. That's
and and I think it's also like you were saying, you kind of end up living with it. Like you're like, all right, well, it's already mine. I'll take it. And I try to ask myself, like, how comfortable do I feel with that? Like, am I okay with paying, if it's like a big purchase, with the monthly payments? Not like, can I afford it? Like, can I make the payments? We can make the payments, but is that bringing peace to me, or is that making me uncomfortable at this point, right? Am I constantly thinking about my retirement account, or maybe I should have put that into that or whatever else?
Yeah. But we don't think about that in our 20s, and we're not kind of supposed to, because, who wants to think about retiring at 21? You think that's like 50 years away. Why would I even think about that now? I want to go spend the money, and then we get ourselves in.
I feel bad because, so I have an 18-year-old now, right? And I think we mentioned about like kind of getting them ready, and you don't want them to kind of do the same mistakes you did and all that other stuff. And I've overly done that. And she is making that clear to me, where she's like, hey, Dad, I need to bump my head, man. Like, you keep telling me. And I'm like, I know, but I don't want you to. It's a weird phase in life, as when you're creating an adult in a way, or raising one, because you're trying to get them prepped to flap their wings and leave the nest. But your whole life, you've been kind of like taking care of them, make sure it's cool. And now that they're about to get out the nest, you're kind of like, wait, no. But you got to let go. But something I also did for her was, and we mentioned this earlier, about like going to college and prepping them to make sure that they know that it's not that simple as all that. I had her call a lot of my friends that graduated at different colleges and do different jobs, and I had her interview them and ask them, like, what was your college experience like? Are you doing the things that you majored in or that you studied, or would you do something different? And luckily, a lot of them told them, like, hey, go to community college, man. Like, don't waste it for parties, for sure, of trying to get into a certain university. Like, go that route first, and then go there. Then go to like a university if you want to, if you even have to. There's some trades that you don't need to. There's a whole bunch of other things out there. And trades are the future, in my opinion. I feel like that is definitely where the economy is going to go for a lot of people. But yeah.
Gone are the days of the typical warehouse job or blue collar jobs, even like firefighting and policing. It's, you're starting to see the transition, because people don't want to stay in the same career choice for 30, 40 years. It's like there's so many options out there, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what's the right path for them. And it's funny that you mentioned about, I am not a parent, but I believe it when parents say they want to protect their kids to the nth degree. You've seen things in life that you learn from, and you want to protect your kids from not going through the same mistakes, because you know what the outcome is going to be, like naturally any parent would. But the other side of it is they kind of have to figure that on their own. Otherwise, it just won't click. I could tell you need to put this much into a savings account. You need to make sure you get your degree by this time and don't have student debt. And you need to find the right person in your life. You do all these things there, and you could be correct. But without the person feeling it out, it's like, okay, I did it because they told me to, but I don't really get what the others, or why can't I do this instead? You hear that a lot, unfortunately or unfortunately, probably unfortunately, with a lot of Christian families. They raise their especially they're really tough on the daughters. Like, you shall live like this, like this, like this. And then when the daughter gets like 19, 20 years old, it's like, I'm free. And they start doing things differently because they don't have their parents around anymore to say, hey, hold them down this tight a little bubble. We're doing this to protect you. And they're like, no, I want to go live my life and try this thing and do that thing and meet these guys. And it's like, you kind of have to go out and experience that in the world. Otherwise, the longer you prolong those learning experiences, it's, what does that do for you when you're 30 or 40? I never did this, or because I never tried that, I don't know what this feels like. And yeah, I'm sure it must be frustrating as a father to just be like, I have to just step back and let her, get out the nest and fall a couple times and be there to support her, but knowing that she's got to be able to pick herself up and find her own way. I mean, I'm sure that's got to be frustrating at sometimes.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, parenting is really more learning, right? You're learning from your kids a lot more than they're learning from you, because they'll probably one thing in one ear out the other, right? Like they're learning, but they're watching from behaviors, like more so than what you're saying. My daughter will pick up on things. I know she does, and sometimes she like resentfully does not want to listen, right? She just does not want to. But I know it's hidden because I could tell. That being said, it's more important to live life the way you are expecting them or hoping that they live. So like my wife and I will beef with each other. And I like to show her that, hey, there's still love there. Like, we're going to disagree on things, but there's still love there. And then lately, since she's a little bit older now I'm trying to like gross her out with how much flirting I do with my wife too, right? Intentionally to show like, hey, eventually, because I know she has a boyfriend now. And I want to make sure that I can set a good example of like, a healthy marriage still requires you to flirt with them and, all this other things. So,
did you meet him yet?
I have.
Did you have that talk with him?
I've had a few talks with them. They're actually, oh man, they're great kids. It's so funny because like, I never wanted to be that guy, because I always said to myself, like, this person is going to, like, essentially you're handing your daughter off to this man or young boy or whatever. And if you show them your arsenal, like, those things are hella funny, right? But if you show them who you are, you're showing them like aggression. Like, I don't want this dude to like then take it out on my daughter because of me being a dick, right? So I try being nice, but I mean, I could come off as a very, I guess, intimidating person. I never thought that, but like, they're like, Dad, you're grilling them. And I'm like, I wasn't trying to, you know what I mean? Not at all. But I think kids are just, especially this generation, they're the kindest freaking individuals I've seen out there so far. Like, this generation is super cool. Her boyfriend's got a good head on his shoulders. She has a great head on her shoulders.
Isn't it amazing that your mindset goes to this? I'm handing my daughter off to this kid who's 18 years old. He's a kid. We'll call it what it is at that age. In real life, I'm not, knocking on her relationship. Maybe she'll marry the guy and do whatever. Yeah. Odds are, with the way they were working now, she'll probably have, several types of relationships because she's trying to figure out what she wants. Sure. Do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to be a career person? Do I want to move away to New York? Whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so back in the day, it was always, like my parents, actually probably my grandparents' generation, the person you met at 17 or 18, you were probably going to marry them because you're just so used to your small, tight-knit community, and you start a family with them. You grow up in the neighborhood, and life was good. That's what we knew. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, with social media and the fact that you can do almost anything you want now, the odds of somebody being with this person for longer than maybe a year or two, are a lot smaller now than they were back in the day. So it's almost like, do you have that in the back of your mind where it's a great relationship now? They're having fun. They're learning each other, figuring out what they want, but also knowing she's also developing her own skills and where she wants to be at in her life, and that, he may or may not be around in the next year or two. No disrespect to that guy, whatever your name is.
And even actually on the first night of when he came over, I told him, I mean, there's a chance that you guys are over within a month, 3 months or less. Like, that's not, and when I mean like handing her off, I don't think she's going to marry him. And they might think they might. And maybe I wouldn't even be mad at it, technically. You know what I mean?
Well, we all think that at that age. Your first girlfriend or your first boyfriend.
For sure.
Whatever. It's like, okay, this, because you don't know any better. You just know the Disney fairy tale. You meet somebody, you live happily ever after. So why would there be a second person?
Sure.
And then you go through the heartbreak. Yeah. For whatever reason, maybe even well-intentioned. Someone has to move away, and that's what you figure out. Yeah.
And for me, like, it's more of like the handing off part. And this is where you find out that I'm like a little bit paranoid and hyper aware of things. But I'm thinking more, all right, dude, you're going to take her in your car. You're going to be driving. Don't be reckless. Don't rape. Don't do any of those things. Like, those are my mindset. Is in this moment, I don't know how this individual, any human might be, right? They might be sadistic. They might not. I don't know this cat, And I'm trusting my daughter for the first time to leave my protection to go on her own with another person. And so my mind is, how do I get him to buy in and to be on my team, as opposed to having a negative connotation or a negative idea of me and be like, I'm about to get this cat. Because I know some dudes that may have done that, right? Or that may have that mindset of like already not liking the dad. And instead, I want you on my team as opposed to being against me. I want you to want to be more willing to want to be inside of my circle. And I think being kinder to them up front, and filling them out and asking them real questions, you know what I mean? And being able to pick up on like red flags that might pop up. But I told them too, we've had a few conversations. Like all my conversations happen at my barbershop. I've had a conversation with her pastor that she started going to. So that's been our biggest thing. Honestly, it's religion has been my thing. I don't go to church. And she started getting closer, and I've had conversations with the pastor at my shop, like, hey, we need to talk about this and that, and we're getting cool. I think with parenting, you just really need to be intentional and just really be involved as much as you can. Not crazy over involved, but if there's something that's coming up for you that's making you uncomfortable, I think you do need to handle that sooner than later. Just to let other people know, like, hey, I'm not just like piecing out on these things. But even with her boyfriend, they've had presentations like, hey, can she spend the night at my house for New Year's Eve? And they put a whole PowerPoint presentation for me and my wife. They're like, I know you're concerned about sex, so there's going to be no sex. They mentioned that 3 times.
They made a PowerPoint
presentation.
This is a whole new world now.
I'm telling you, this generation is kind. It's nice. It's thoughtful.
That's a little like, let's make a PowerPoint to your dad so he knows this is what's going to happen.
Here is my brother's number. Here's my dad's number. Here's my mom's number. This is what we're going to be at. And maybe that's them, or maybe that's my daughter. And I told him a few days later, because there was a time that he responded to a text message, and I wasn't a fan of the way that he responded to the text message to my wife. So I was like, hey, we need to go and talk. So we talked, and we walked around the marina. And he handled that amazingly. And I was talking to my father-in-law because I was like, hey, I'm about to come down on this cat. I'm about to call his dad, and I'm about to call him, and we're about to have this conversation. And luckily, being able to talk to my father-in-law calmed me down, because I get kind of hot-headed on certain things. But, in relationships, everybody has a customer. Like, I'm his customer in the sense that he has to gain my trust, but really, actually, he's my customer in the sense that I have to gain his trust as well, right? I got to make sure, or he's my manager in that sense of like, however you look at it. And so I could come on to him and come up strong, like, hey man, don't talk to my wife like this, or I want you to respond this way. But instead it was like, hey man, so what was going through your mind when you responded in this situation? And it was literally a good message. It was just about so do you mind if I go into that a bit?
Go on to it, because I'm guessing that it was taken out of context.
Well, so my daughter was coming from her mom's house, and then they were coming back to my house to Alameda, and damn, I'm gonna come off super protective. But anyway, I was talking to some friends about my daughter and this and that, and my wife and I were like, all right, where is she? Because she's coming home. So we checked the location on the phone, and she was in the town at a certain spot in the east. I was like, why is she out there? So my wife texts her like, hey, what are you doing in Oakland? Come through as soon as you can or whatever. I go to work. My wife sends me a text about, she sent a text to her boyfriend saying like, hey, I don't want you, or no, she didn't say I don't want you. It's like, hey, can you not take my daughter to, and she said her name, not my daughter, so that sounds a little bit colder, but can you not take, whoop-de-whoop to the town, without letting us know that you're going to this specific area, and preferably not after this time. And he responded with like, hey, I have like 8 brothers. I keep them all safe and all this other stuff. Let's not assume that I'm blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I read, let's not assume, and I do all this, I got hot for some reason. My daughter came home, and I was like, hey, did you know that, your mom like texts this person or whatever? And he was like, yeah. I was like, what would be your response to her asking you that? And she was like, my response would have been like, okay. And I was like, yeah. That's the same response that I wanted, just a simple, okay. And so I talked to him, and I told him like, hey, your response was cool, but if you would have like prefaced it with like, hey, I'm going to take your daughter to this part of the town real quick. I have 8 brothers. I could keep them safe. All these things are cool. You know, here's my number. Approaching that first instead of responding with that would have changed that whole predicament for me. It would have made that whole thing feel a little bit better. So we talked about it, and I told him like, hey, I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to talk to you. You could expect me to be me. And I just need you to be you so that I could kind of maneuver the way that I parent just off of knowing who you are. There's no need to lie about whatever. Just tell me who you are, and I'll make my adjustments from that.
That has been a big problem that I've seen with texting, is that if he would have called you or your wife and said the exact same thing that he said in the text, it probably would not have gotten taken that way. But when we send text messages, they get misinterpreted all the time. We think the person has a bad attitude because there was one word in caps, or because we interpret it as, oh, that's a different message.
Right.
Why would they say that? In real life, if they called you and said the exact same thing, you would be, oh, okay. I do. I mean, I'm catching that more and more. So as much as I can, if it's something important, I try to call the person and say X, Y, or Z. Or if it's someone does a great job for me doing whatever, I'd rather call you and tell you, you did a great job for me. I'm really impressed with your work, rather than send a text, because you don't get that personal feeling with it. You don't get you can easily get misinterpreted. If I say, hey, great job, like great job or great job, you don't know. So calling somebody and they hear it from you, or telling them in person, is always superior to doing the whole text thing. But sometimes we get so caught up because it's so convenient, and it led to that conversation. And the whole thing could have been avoided if you just picked up the phone and said, hey, you're
100%.
That's one of those lessons I wonder if we're going to teach our new generation, is that this personal communication is it's almost becoming a lost art. Even in law enforcement, we have I'm sure you hear about staffing shortages with departments. It's on a new level now, because we have a hard time finding people who are just competent enough to be able to talk to others. The younger that the people are who are applying, we're realizing they're more like this. They're on the phone. So they're so used to it. So when you go to an interview and tell me about yourself, or tell me about a stressful situation, it's like, yeah, there was this one time when my dog got out of the house and I didn't. And then you look at the body language, and they're either looking down or they're looking away. And they may be telling you verbally the right thing, but we're looking at that as, okay, if you go on a call for service for a married couple who's been married 30 years and you have to separate them and talk to them, you can't even look me in the eye now in this interview. How do I know you're going to do a great job out there? And then when we give them an opportunity, we kind of see the same results. There's a hard time talking to other people, a hard time handling conflict, a hard time. And part of it is the whole society thing. We say what you want about certain social movements. There's a lot of perception out there that if we do something wrong in law enforcement, we're bad, we're going to get arrested, or lose our job, whatever. So people get paranoid about that when they're brand new. Like, oh, if I say this the wrong way, they're going to interpret it the wrong way, then I'm going to lose my job. And they overthink everything too much. And it's been a challenge for us to kind of get people honed in. And as a result, we just haven't had that many people applied. Even in your home city of Alameda, $75,000 hiring
I even thought
bonus.
about it.
That's it's for laterals only, so you already have to have experience?
Nah.
Oh, it's for entry level.
Entry level.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Usually it was only laterals, but this is where it's coming to. Nobody's finding the right candidates, and nobody's applying. They're saying, well, why would I want to do that when I could go work at Google, make $250, and sit at home all day on the computer? I know no one's yelling at me, no one's shooting at me, whatever. And the response has been, there's just less people who want to do that job. And so it's going to be interesting to see with these hiring bonuses what happens, because they don't seem to be producing the results we think we would want them to. There's people that some cities have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 hiring bonuses, can't hire anybody. They're like, well, if it's not the money, then what is it? It's a lot of people just don't want to do the job anymore. And
I feel like too with, and I'm obviously not a cop, so I don't know all of that. I think a lot of the times too is people may not understand what is the actual job description of a police officer. And because there's so many other factors that are making people unsure of joining that force, that it makes it a little bit harder for them to be like, I don't know if I want to do it, right? Like, not even just like the safety hazards and concerns of just like, what am I responding to? Why do I respond to this? How am I supposed to handle it? What is my purpose? I think I was reading some report too about like, I don't know, I'm not a police officer, so I have no idea what it's like inside, but I could see that being something that hinders folks from applying. And it's a hard job.
It's definitely has its challenges. There's a lot of improvements. Technology has gotten better. There's been a lot of great things for the industry. One of the challenges is finding people who want to do it and finding people who do want to do it that can have this conversation. I mean, these things are great. These smartphones that I'm holding here, it comes with a cost. And if you rely on this too much, then you just don't realize that you're so focused on the object, on the item, that you lose the whole interpersonal social skills. Like what I told you earlier, this show is designed to be in person. I will wait for someone to be able to have the time to come down here and have a 2-hour conversation with me who they probably have never met, rather than just doing Zoom interviews with people I could reach from around the country or the world who may be bigger names, but you lose that connectivity. I'm talking to a screen or my computer here with somebody wherever they're at, New York City, London, wherever, and they may answer the questions appropriately. The answers are good, but you're missing that element there. You're missing that personal engagement. The fact that we've been doing this for about an hour and a half now, and we're having conversations about this when we probably never thought it was going to go there to begin with, it's only possible because we're able to sit down and talk to each other face to face, and it's becoming a lost art. And I want to see that change. And my hope is with this show is the whole philosophy is that I want people to understand that they do have control over aspects of their life that they felt that they don't have. And most people in our age group are concerned about fitness, finances, and mental health, and maybe thinking that they've been dealt a bad hand and they don't know what to do with it, or this is the way it is, I'm sort of stuck here. And my whole thing with talking to the people that I talk to is you do have control. Here's an example of somebody that wanted to go to the fire academy. It didn't work out for him. He was able to get into a craft, which is cutting hair, which led him to opening a business. And if you'd asked him at that when he was 17 or 18, he probably thought, why would I ever do that? How is that even possible? And then you see how life brings you your up and downs, and then also your own stories from what you've heard in the barbershop, from what your clients tell you. And you see, hey, people go through ups and downs in life, and how do you find your own way? And if I can create an environment where people can listen to others and take a little bit here or there, doesn't mean you listen to everything that everybody says, but you're taking a little bit and you're saying, how could I take this little nugget from this conversation and improve my life? Or I never thought of it that way. And that's what I want to create with this.
That's great, man. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we do need to take more control. One of my acting teachers said, like, you can't control life until you take control of your life, right? Like, and that's super simple, but super real. Like, you can't control life until you take control of it. And there's some books that are super cool, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I feel like that book kind of changed my life a lot. Books are just the key. Like, the knowledge is out there. Information is out there. Success leaves a footprint, and you can do it.
And there's audiobooks. You don't have to buy them anymore and stack them up in the garage. You can just put it on instead of listening to the radio. You have your Bluetooth. Hook it up to your car Bluetooth and then put on an audiobook or a podcast. And that's how a lot of people are listening to that, is all audio through their, especially over here, hour and a half commute. You live out in the valley, but you work in San Francisco. Instead of just listening to the same radio station, which you could, nothing wrong with it. Here's some other ways to get more knowledge: books, podcasts. People trying to give you unbiased, objective information. You take what you want to do with it. There's too much information out there where people think that they're experts, or that my way is the highway, your right wing or your left wing, whatever it is. And it's just here's all the information. You decide what you want to do with it. It could be left, could be right, could be right, could be wrong. It pertains to your life and how you can improve it. And people want authenticity.
Yeah, I feel like the information is out there and it's super accessible more than ever. I think the biggest skill is how do you filter out that information? And I think the way you filter it out is you have to search within yourself, right? You have to search about, again, what does success look like for you? What does it mean to you? What is it that you want to do? What's your why? Like, I don't think people are kind of losing their why a little bit more.
Did you read that book?
Which one? Oh, Simon
Sinek.
I think I did read the book. If I heard, that's the only thing with audibles that kind of bothered me, is that then I don't know if it was, where did I hear that or that. I've definitely seen his TED Talks. I've definitely seen all that. Simon Sinek is amazing.
Well, let's see if one day I can convince him to come out here to San Francisco.
Hey,
that would be something.
Let's not even, let's see. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time for
He
that
comes
to
to
happen.
Google enough. So Simon, if you're watching this, expect an email or a phone call, and we'll make this conversation happen. But it's funny you brought up the whole social, or we've been talking about social skills and how it's been sort of going up and down and what we're losing in society. Part of that has been, how has that affected our relationships? Now, you work in a barbershop, and guys, we all talk in there. So I'm really curious to see what the vibe has been from a lot of your clients about how to make a relationship work, or even probably better if they're single. What's the dating market looking like for a lot of your clients?
Dude, people for a long time were dating the app. right? Like you're on Tinder, you're on Bumble, you're just dating the app. You're not dating people. You're just seeing what else it has to offer you, and you're swiping. I missed all of that. My wife and I have known each other since 6th grade. And so it's been a kind of while there. We did kind of start dating off of Facebook as we became adults, but the dating thing in there, I don't know. I think my clientele, they're usually in a serious relationship or in a relationship. There are a few that are checking Tinder all the time.
What's been their experience? I have not used that
I don't think
app.
they like it. They're not a big fan of it. I think it was cool. The novelty of it when it first came out was pretty nice. But then after a while, you're not going to find somebody or something meaningful there. And I think it's because there's always another option. You don't give somebody enough room to have blemishes in a way, right? It's
Now,
like,
do they feel that's the women that are telling them there's somebody better, or themselves thinking, okay, she's
a little
cool,
bit of
but
both.
how about
I
that?
think both of them are a little picky. Now I want to say picky, but it's like it's a dance, right? It's not. I mean, you have both partners. If one person, let's say, already gives you that vibe that they think that there's somebody better than you out there, that's kind of an excusable thing right there, right? Where you're like, if you're already not feeling me because you're thinking about something else already, then this is not the type of person I want to be with. Now, if there's like, okay, this person, whether you find them attractive or not, or, something else, there's no real dive, I feel, happening in those conversations, because it's like a one-time thing, right? You kind of date them real quick and then on to the next one. It's like speed dating,
Yeah.
but slowed down a bit.
I'm curious with this because as society changes, the priorities change. Your guy friends who are single now that you talk to in the shop all the time, are they looking for like wife material? Like, I want to settle down and have kids, or you know what, I want to play the field, or you know what, I don't know what I want. Let me just figure out what's going on.
That's funny. I'm thinking about one dude in particular, and he, there was this girl that I felt like he was digging. I know he was digging, and then think she got laid off and whatever, had to dip out of the town. And I think that's one person that he was kind of like really, really vibing with. And then after that, he was like, all right, I'm just going to play the field. But for the most part, I think a lot of guys are trying to somewhat settle down. And my clientele is different, right? It's probably from like 20, the age demographic is like 27 to 65, 70. Like that's the demographic. It's not super young kids. When I was working in Berkeley, I had a lot more kids coming from like UC Berkeley, which one day I'll get my hands on UC Berkeley coming through again. But for the most part, yeah, it's a little bit, it's like men that are trying to get more established or feeling ready to settle down a little bit more.
I asked that because, you ask me when we were 20, 21, 22, the mindset was probably you're just going to look for some, and then we didn't have Tinder, Bumble. We didn't have social media. I had MySpace when that was a whole thing when we graduated college. And it was just, okay, you'll just find somebody and you guys get married and deal with it that way. And with all these options now, and like I told you, as guys, we really don't get our act together. If left alone and just let us develop, it doesn't happen until we're in our early to mid 30s, if we're lucky, maybe like mid 30s, just depending on how life throws a curveball at you. And it throws plenty of curveballs at you. But I'm curious now if these guys who are in their 20s are specifically looking to get married and have kids at a 20-year-old age, when we all know that, dude, you got another decade before you should probably be thinking about that. And it's just my 2 cents. And again, you're also speaking from someone who's had a kid already. So they might be like, well, what are you talking about? You have a kid already. What's the problem?
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if they're looking to get married, but at least something more meaningful, more so than just like very superficial. And I think that we all I don't know, right? I had to settle down a few times pretty quickly. But even in my desires to date when I was younger, had I not had a baby at like 17, I would have still wanted to have a meaningful relationship. Not so much like rotating out. There was a moment in my life where that was a little bit more, but like definitely not I don't know. I think humans, like, we generally want some sort of connection. Tinder has been pretty superficial for them. And so Yeah, they're more in the zone of not necessarily marriage, but something a little bit more long term.
So what's been their feedback? I mean, it's different for us. You know, we're at a different age and
Mm-hmm.
different parts in our lives where I'm not going on those apps looking for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to see what feedback these dudes are getting from all the women that they're dating. Is it there's no connection? You don't make enough money. Is it superficial stuff like you're not tall enough? Is it you don't want to move away? Like, what's kind of the feedback they've been getting where it's like, hey, it ain't working out?
You know what sucks about that is that I don't think they're getting feedback.
So
It's
they don't even
ghost.
know. So they don't even know what they're doing wrong.
It's
How
just
about
like,
that?
yeah, it's just a lot of ghosting that happens.
And do they think that it's all the
Dudes,
women's
too.
fault, or they think, hey, it's maybe I'm
No, I think they
screwing
know
up?
that's just how the game goes. You know, actually, I was talking to a friend of mine. All my clients are friends after a while. They
Yeah.
just we build that relationship. So I was talking to a friend of mine about Tinder and his time when he was on it, and he's like, if I saw that person a couple of times and I just wasn't really feeling it, I don't feel like they deserve an explanation for why I'm not talking to them anymore. Like, it just wasn't clicking, and that's kind of it. And unfortunately, like, I don't think he's the only one that does that. And there's no feedback, so there's no way to, like, say, what do I got to do better? And also, like, what do you mean got to do anything better, right? I think you do have to be who you are and yourself, but I think you need to have a little bit of self-awareness to know what makes a good partner.
It's interesting because the way that I've seen, and again, me trying to talk to some 20-year-olds about what they're dealing with is not something that I don't have a conversation with 20-year-olds where they have their own world, I have mine. The little bit of things that I pick up on and I hear, because of what social media, as great as it is, what it's also done is you kind of think there's always a better person out there. And if you get caught in that mindset, there's always somebody better. And this is probably more of an issue for women who want to have kids. Next thing you know, the years go by and now you're still in this market, and now you're 29, 30 years old, not realizing now you're competing with the other 21-year-old women who are just getting into the game. And as time goes on, it's like, okay, where did I miss the boat here? What's going on? And a big complaint against a lot of the dudes out there who are trying to figure this whole thing out is, like we talked about, lack of social skills, lack of direction, or lack of, understanding what the other person needs or want. And I'm just curious if, in talking to your guys, has anybody ever said, you know what, I need to work on something. I need to get my money together. I need to get my job together. I ain't in a position to be doing this and I'm figuring that out. Or is it pretty much, it's all their fault?
No, I'm very happy that the people that come into my shop have a lot of ownership. And I think that comes from, like, the vibe of the shop of, like, I hold myself accountable and all that. And I think there's a certain person that comes in that if you're coming into the shop, you have a lot of accountability. There's probably maybe one or two that they got some maturing to do. And you could tell, and they can kind of tell. But
Are they in the, like, 20s range?
yeah,
20 range,
yeah,
okay.
like they're definitely on the younger side of things. But they also know that they work a lot, or that they're not there yet either. Like, they might want a long-term relationship, but they know that if it actually landed in their lap, they're not ready for that too. I don't think they'd put it solely on the opposite or whoever they're going after. But
that's big that they'd say that, because I would have thought the impression would have been the other way. Oh, it's all their fault. I'm doing everything fine. I make good money, and I'm a nice guy, and I have a good family background. So if you don't want me, it must be your fault. Then
I'd probably call them out on that.
Oh, good.
I probably would, but I think not for the most part. I think they do have a lot of self-awareness to be like, here's where I'm at. And especially if you've dated for a long time, if you've been dating different people for a long time, I think you know that you're either not ready, or that there's something that you're scared of to either make that commitment. Or if it's, actually, I know a guy who has a kid, goes back and forth on Tinder, says he doesn't want to do it anymore, has gone back to it a couple of times, has said he doesn't want to do it because he has some things to work on himself, but we all get lonely. And there's different stressors happening, and specifically in that individual's life too, but different responsibilities, whether it's, kids or parents or something else like that too, that you need a little bit of companionship during that time. Even if it's probably not long-term, like marriage, but you still need somebody to kind of do that. And honestly, one of the biggest things is that, so I have this men's group that I run, and I think one of the biggest things that there's not enough kind of dudes hanging out and checking themselves and checking on themselves, right? Like just having a clique that you can be real with and will also hold you accountable and say, all right, bro, you're full of crap on that or whatnot. And I pride myself with having a crew of homies that are definitely the type to hold each other accountable. And
that's a big thing. And I think a lot of guys don't get credit for that, is when you do have that group of guys that's going to be able to put you in check and say, I'm your buddy, man. I'm going to tell you when you're screwing up, and you're screwing up. And they may not want to hear it at first, but then afterwards, oh, yeah, maybe I do need to. It's definitely hard to have that self-reflection that maybe I'm screwing up here. I had that epiphany when I was 21, 22. I'm like, I'm not getting the results I want in the dating sphere or the working sphere. I made all these reasons why it wasn't possible. It's hitting me now. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what that is, but I need to go figure it out now if I want to get through life. And that's where I said, you know what? It's like the Alcoholics Anonymous thing. The first thing you got to do is admit, I have a problem. I need help. And then once you get that, now you put yourself in a position where you can go ask people who have experience, or get someone to mentor you, find out what the winners are doing that have the lifestyle that you think you want, and emulating the little habits that they have. If there's one thing that I've learned from, especially being in San Francisco, it's not so hard. Like millionaires around here, I don't know any billionaires directly, it'd be kind of something. Is
you probably wouldn't know.
You're right, I wouldn't know. They wouldn't be like, hey, check out my bank account. Well, there's nobody that I know that's at that level yet. But it's like the one thing that they sort of regurgitate to you is that if you're a guy in your 20s, this is when you're making your mark. This is when you have to learn all those skills, when you have to build a business and drop and fail and then restart over again and learn and take what you learn there and continue to build it up. And then while you're doing this, you're improving your physical health, you're improving your mental health. And we have so much information about how, diets work and what's better for you, and meditation, if you're into that, or yoga, and things to keep yourself healthy, because you're spending your 20s pretty much building yourself up to a point where once you get into your 30s, now you're in a whole different world. And we used to think 30 was so old that, why would I wait till I'm 30? But really, that's when everything's starting to fall into place. And you'd be amazed just the connections that you can make when you get into your 30s. If you've done everything right and you spent your 20s just working on yourself, you haven't worried so much about focusing on a relationship or focusing on making this much money or focusing on having that brand new BMW, that now it's starting to fall into place naturally. Can't explain it. It just starts to fall into place. You meet the right people. Maybe you lose some friends that you had in your 20s that they took a different path and you had to make that hard decision. Do I keep in touch with them because they're my boys from high school, or do I sort of filter them out? And then now I'm hanging out with a new crew of people that has a similar mindset that I have. I can't tell you how many friends I've lost because they went a different way. In some cases, it wasn't a bad way. It's like maybe they got married young and had kids and they're doing the family thing, and I'm not. So I need to be around more people who think more like me, people who want to build something like this platform here, people who are concerned about their financial health, and you sort of tailor your network to that, and then it opens up even more doors to the people that you can meet. Next thing you know, you're socializing with people you never knew that you existed. You're getting more connections to help you get that loan to build that business, and it's all because you did the work in your 20s to help build yourself up to that way. If there's anything that I could tell like guys in the 20s that are trying to figure this whole thing out, as stupid as it sounds, and as much as I would have not listened if I was your age too, it really is focusing and having patience and trying to build yourself up in all these different areas first. And then once you get in your 30s, like compound interest, it starts to click. Can't explain how it does it, but it just starts to click, and you got to trust the process. Thank you, Joel Embiid.
There's this one guy when I was living in San Diego for a moment, and I was working at Nordstrom, and I was selling shoes, and we got hired at the same time. He was older than me. I think he was 34 at the time, and I was probably around 21, maybe. And he had said he had a condo and another spot, and I was like, dang, this dude's got a condo and he's working at Nordstrom and all that other stuff too. Like, how's he doing these things? And in San Diego, and I asked him, and he was just like, he was working just for fun. He wanted to do makeup because he liked makeup, and so he was putting makeup on girls and stuff like that. He was doing it just for fun, but he said something that really got me, which was like, I took care of myself when I was younger. I took care of my future self when I was younger, and I never even thought about the future when I was young. I was just like, right now in this moment, I can barely make it. How do I get out of where I'm at? I can't even think years ahead. And I've kept that mindset now of just thinking as much as I can far out, and really just planning backwards. So have your end goal in mind, and then work your way back to where you're at now, and how do you kind of get there. So that's been that's been pretty cool. One thing that I did too, and I tell my sister and a whole bunch, anybody who will listen, when you go work at whatever job you're going to work at, consider it like a paid internship. This is your chance, especially if you ever have an idea of starting your own business, right? It's, climb as high as you can in the job. For me, it was Texas Roadhouse, right? So Texas Roadhouse in Union City. Yeah, I love that spot. I love Texas Roadhouse, man. I love it because of what it represents. For me, I had all my closest friends come from there. But
the food sucks now. I have to tell you that.
Yeah.
Compared to these steakhouses around here, like,
sure,
oh, yeah.
Quality and all that, but the price point is good. Now, no, but what I loved about it, for this other barbershop that I worked at, I even created their training manual. And I'm not sure if they're implementing it or not anymore, but it was based off of the Texas Roadhouse training manual. But what I kind of did was, I worked as a host, to a server, to a bartender, to a training coordinator, to the assistant service dude. It wasn't like a service manager or assistant service manager, but it was like they kind of they make little positions for you to kind of move on up and kind of stay in there. But I did the product and loss statements for them. We did all the head weight. So you put in whatever the restaurant made that day and then that week, and you report it all. You balance out their spreadsheets. So you're learning on their dime. And I learned how to run my business based off of them allowing me to kind of move up and learn more and more and more. And it doesn't have to be like a super prestigious type, if that is the right word, but a super big company. It could be as simple as a restaurant, but just learning how the whole business works. And you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, but unfortunately for you, you're doing it on their dime and they're trusting you, and you're going to have integrity to do it correctly, but you're going to learn. And it's better to learn off of somebody else that's way more established that can handle that than learning it on your own. And so I've taken that approach as much as I can, tried working at the companies that I liked. So I worked at Nordstrom because that provided great customer service. And so I take that approach to what I do in barbering. I worked at Starbucks because, it's all about that connection, saying that person's name and really remembering that. I take that to what I do with barbering, right? Remember every person and their name and what we talked about last and what haircut we gave them. It's a lot of a memory game. Mm-hmm. And then Roadhouse, the consistency that it doesn't change whether your server goes on a break and then you get a new server that comes in. The service should still be the same. The greeting style should be the same. The story is the same. All those things is the same. And then the discipline from Fire, and then the community and the connection, the real genuine connection from acting, like all those things have tied up into making it for my barbershop. And
look at that. You're by 35 now, right? Give or take?
I just turned 36.
Okay, congratulations there.
Thanks.
So, but look at that. Like right now, if you took a screenshot of your life now, all these experiences that you went through, look at how much it's made you better now and how it's made you a better barbershop owner and what you can take to make into the future. Whereas if you go back and you tell your 21-year-old self or your 20-year-old self about all this whole thing, you might think, hey, you're going to go to the fire academy. It's not going to work out for you. And your 21-year-old self might be like, well, then my life is over. What am I going to do? Nothing's going to happen. And all these things that you crossed along the way, these little experiences, the people that you met, it all built up to where it is now. And it's living proof that for anybody in their 20s, guys especially, who are like, how is this whole thing going to work for me? I can't see the future. It just works itself out once you have the willingness and the effort to go learn and take jobs that you may not have thought. The Texas Roadhouse experience, great thing. Who would have thought when you were 21 that you were going to be in charge of what you were in charge of? Having that manual, taking that experience, putting it over to a different place, training people, and then using that same experience to now go into your barbershop and make your experience better. If you started that barbershop when you were 22 years old, you wouldn't have had that knowledge. Who knows where you would have been up right now? But even then, that might have been a learning experience to go forward like that.
Sure.
So if anybody asks at your shop, how does this whole thing, how do you get there? It's like, it takes time for you guys. Mm-hmm. But then if you get too bogged down early on in those car payments for the car you don't need, the house that you bought because someone told you you're supposed to buy a house because that's the smart thing to do and you don't have the money for it, you get up to your nose in credit card debt buying all the bling and all the fancy stuff, you're just taking longer to get to the point where you need to get. You can still get there, and that might be part of the learning process for you, is to go through that financial hardship.
Yeah.
But it can be a point where if you don't get on top of that, now it's holding you down. Now, like I told you earlier, now you might be stuck in that one job that you don't want to be in. You're bitter. You hate the people you work with, but you can't leave because the paycheck is too good.
Right.
So what do? You just sit there and you moan and bitch and complain because you need that money. Wouldn't it be nice to not have to have the freedom where you didn't need that high of a paycheck, that you could take a pay cut somewhere if it meant to be more get your stress levels right, your mental health right, because you want to live to be a long time. I'm 40 years old. People don't believe it. Like, you're 40 years old and I look like I'm 30 or whatever. Part of that reason is because I'm able to make those decisions in life where I can take that stress off of my plate as much as I can. And part of that is that I made a conscious decision not to have children. Doesn't mean I may not have them in the future. I don't know what the future holds. But for right now, that freedom, if you will, has allowed me to build up to what I'm doing, to where I can create this, where I wouldn't have had the time if I consciously chose those big old commitments. Something to be said about that for people.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, I applaud you on all of that. And I think if you mess up, whether it's financially, like, man, just mess up early, early enough to fix those things, right? Because I feel like I got jumped in my first half of life, right? Messing up credit scores, getting into debt, having a kid, not having, the father figure technically and all that other stuff, all those things were stacked against me, but all those things because it happened early enough, it kind of had allowed me to have something to aspire to, which was anything but that, and learn how to get away from that. And so if I wouldn't have gone through some of those financial hardships early on in the beginning, I don't think I would have valued it as much. I'm one of those types of people that kind of needs to see if the stove is really hot that's just who I was and how I am on certain things. On the point of like being bogged down by a job because you bought the house or all that, I was going through the same thing. I was working at a very, very successful barbershop and I was making a cool amount of money at that spot. But my wife and I were like, hey, we got to buy a house soon, or get something just because it's getting crazy. And that was right before I ended up starting my own shop. And I had to make that decision because I felt like at any point this shop owner that I was cool with, but, there was times where it was like up and down and it was kind of rocky at times. And, I don't know how he's feeling this day. He might let me go this day. He might not let me go. And I knew ahead of time that if I were to buy a house because of the money that I was getting paid there, but I was still basically in a way belonging to this guy. Like if he let me go, I couldn't have gone to any other shop and made the type of money that I was making there. It just wasn't going to happen. And so I made sure to not buy a home during that time. Instead, I was like, let me start my own business. Let me see how I can do it by myself without any other barbers, just me, because so many times barbers get dependent on filling their chairs and having a whole bunch of barbers because they end up paying for everything. So I was like, I need to see that I can do this by myself, maintain my mortgage or maintain my rent at that time, and then pay the rent for the actual shop and still make a living on my own. And so in order to do that, you kind of have to take those risks, but those risks are totally worth it. But you need to do the math. Like it's not just like, I'm gonna go. Like, no, you really need to write these things down, have a set goal, and then just execute on the plan.
Yeah, and it's like for me on the financial stuff, it took me till I was in my early 30s before I got rid of all that. Now I still have some debt now, but it's way more manageable. It's within my means, so it's not like I'm over exhausting myself to the point where I can't even function and be dependent upon a specific amount that you get paid for as a salary. But I had to learn that. I had to, I remember those times when I had a hard time paying rent. When I first moved out of my parents' house, I guess I just didn't know how to manage money. Well, I learned quickly, didn't I? Okay, this is real life. Mom and dad don't come out to save you. How are you going to pick yourself up and what are you going to do with it? You're just going to take the interest hit because that might be your only choice right now. But a lesson of life, and it seems like it would be a fun conversation to have at your barbershop with anybody there about, hey, this is how life works, and to be able to talk to people about that, it kind of helps the whole therapeutic process and get a nice haircut while you're at it.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, this has been a great conversation. As you can tell, time does fly when we have these conversations. Yes, things come out that we weren't aware of, but it's been an awesome experience, man. And again, thank you for coming out. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and see some of the work you've done?
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Well, thank you for having me. You can find me on Instagram at Charlie Herrera-Villar on Instagram. I'll be real. I don't check it as often, but leave a little DM or whatever. I'll definitely reach out. And then once we get cool, I'll give you my phone number and all that. But that's where I respond a lot more.
I'll put the link to your Instagram in the description so it makes it easy for the viewer or the listener to click on that. And then your shop now, what's the future of that looking like immediately?
Immediately, we're just going to keep it going. I'm going to keep growing it. And by growing, it's just meaning getting more members to come in and just having a good time. And we'll be expanding to do more community events, and that's the game plan for that.
Is it walk-in or appointment only?
It's appointment only.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
can't just show up to the shop.
No,
if
you can
go
show
on-
up and have a conversation with me if you want to, but like
We need to book you guys in advance so you can make sure you get some fly haircuts. Charlie, this
sure.
was awesome, man. Thank you again for coming out. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to the show. If you were watching on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you like the content, and please share this with somebody that you know that you feel might get good value out of all these episodes. That's how the channel grows. And if you're interested in supporting the channel financially, I do have a Patreon account that I'll put the link in the description below. Anything that you can give will help me provide more equipment and a better environment for all my guests here so I can continue to bring you the content. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or any of the other platforms, please leave me a comment. That's how the algorithms pick up that people are enjoying it. That's how the episodes get pushed out to a different audience. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening and watching. And Charlie, thank you again. Everybody have a good one.